Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Top Cut breakdown video. Ultimate Squad format is coming to a close. I think the first set of Zenkai series comes out September 16th, if I'm not mistaken. So we're closing out this format, and we'll be soon entering a new phase of the game where the game is going to change pretty rapidly with Zenkai and whatnot. So we're looking at today's video, the PPG event that took place at the TCG Con in Tampa. And we're going to really use this to look at how these decks did here at the end of the Ultimate Squad format, but we'll also look at how they may or may not transition into the first set of Zenkai, because it seems like some decks might be weaker than others inherently based on their ability to use Zenkai or not use Zenkai. So we'll talk about that as we get into the video. Let's hop right in. So again, this was a DBS TCG Con in Tampa. I went to the TCG Con in Edison, New Jersey, and it was an awesome time. TCG Con itself was awesome, but as always, PPG hosts great events. And if you ever knew, PPG posts all the results of their events typically on ppgeventmanagement.com. We're just using their website for this event because it was only one event to talk about, and I figured that PPG lays it out so nicely, and I can give them a good shout out here for doing that. So they have the decks all down here, all top 16, and they have links to most of the decks, and we'll take a look at the ones that seem interesting. We'll just talk about the other ones that are pretty obvious at this point. But yeah, I just want to give PPG a huge shout out for always getting the event data out in such a timely manner. So first place here, we have U7 Goku. Now, I'm not sure exactly how big this event was. I'm going to err on the side of it being a bit smaller. I'm going to guess like 50 to 60 players, just considering it's the end of the format. Gen Con just happened, so a lot of people spent their kind of allotted travel management to that. And I'm going to assume this was a smaller event. If it was bigger, like 100 plus players, that would be awesome. I would love to hear that, because Florida is like a card gaming state. So wouldn't be surprised if that was the case either, but I'm just going to assume it was smaller. So U7 Goku, one that we're all pretty much used to, and very surprised that it's not getting hit going into Ultimate Squad format. I'll open up this deck right here real quick. As far as U7 goes, I don't know how it's going to do in Zenkai, to be honest. I think that this engine here, Gohan Ultimate Essence, is going to be good for Zenkai as far as it goes with U7 Goku, because, you're getting that value from comboing, right? So you're getting that value from comboing, and they're putting that in the Zenkai. And even now with the addition of Supreme Kai of Time, Guardian of Space Time, this is a card that's become rather popular in U7. I think it's really good in U7 myself. And we found out that Z Energy color does not matter. You can play a red Z battle card by using black Z Energy. So you can combo this card, put it in your Z Energy, and that's really good value. So in many aspects, U7 is a solid deck in the combo step. And we also know that red is getting some of the best Z battle cards in the first set of Z series between SS4 Goku Defender of Life and I think it's Rush Attack SSB Vegeta. Those are two very, very good Z battle cards that this deck could easily play. So I think that'll be good for U7, and I also think that we're getting new U7 specific Z battle cards in the anniversary box. So yeah, it does seem like U7 is going to do pretty well going into Zenkai. How's it going to stack up to SS4 Gogeta? A lot of people think SS4 Gogeta might just be the better deck, but what I'll say is it seems like SS4 Gogeta may struggle pretty hard against blue. So where U7 Goku is a bit lower to the ground and has cheaper plays, that might help this deck get around those more controlly blue decks, whereas SS4 Gogeta might suffer a problem in that regard. So we're going to have to kind of wait and see how that shapes up, but I think U7 Goku not taking any hits going into Zenkai, it seems like it's going to be decently positioned in my opinion. But getting back into the list of top 16, we have yellow, black, red Turles coming in second place. Now, I'm assuming that this yellow, black, red just means like base yellow, black for Overwhelm, and red for Champa. Sometimes this gets listed in those ways where like you see here yellow, blue, green, gamma. That's just the only yellow in this gamma deck is Sand Instinct. So don't take that too literally. But for some reason there's no link to this Turles list. I would have actually liked to take a look at it because the yellow and blue yellow lists differ quite a bit. How is Turles going to do going into Zenkai? I think that Turles will be fine as a SS2 Gohan Z Fighter spam deck, but I don't think Turles is going to really abuse Zenkai all that well. And yellow is getting a pretty solid Zenkai card in the form of the SSB Goku. It's basically a 3-drop 25k Poutine that also has Barrier and Deflect. So that card seems really, really strong. Turles is not one that combos all that well, but I still think a deck that can abuse SS2 Gohan plus Cooler, considering that Cooler did not get banned, seems to be in a pretty good spot. Moving on to Gamma. Gamma all seems great going in Zenkai because of the 17-18 unison. Like, it's pretty obvious that they created this unison with Zenkai in mind, right? So this is going to be a great unison in a lot of blue decks because it's going to help a lot of blue decks generate Z energy. And there are a lot of really good blue Z cards coming out too. Blue and red probably have the best Z cards coming out in my personal opinion. Green has some kind of iffy ones. Black doesn't have any real good generic ones, except for SSB Vegeta Surmounting the Impossible. That's a Z card that might just go in every Z deck, to be honest. But yeah, this card is solid for setting up Z energy, and between the 3-drop Cell in the Z deck and the 5-drop Vegeta in the Z deck, those are going to be great cards for Gamma to use, right? And that actually fixes a big problem that Gamma has. Like, it might be pretty rare, but sometimes you run into a problem with Gamma where you just don't draw your cells and you don't end up with them in your energy, so you don't have a turn 4 play. Now, if you're setting up Z energy relatively well, that is fixed. You can always play Cell on 3 from the Z deck. You can always play Vegeta on 5 from the Z deck. So if you miss out on cells, like even the second copy of Cell that you want to play in a game, it's pretty cool the Z deck fixes that. Also interesting that this list included Infernal Villainy Cell. This might also be a good include going into Z series, because obviously, again, like Z energy color does not matter. So having this be an android you can combo with and draw a card seems pretty solid in my opinion. Moving on to the next deck, Yellow Trunks Vegeta. Another one that seems okay going into Z series, because you can actually do a lot of combo tricks with extra copies of the Trunks and Vegeta 1-drops. So it's pretty easy to just, like, you know, your opponent attacks with their 15k leader, you chump block it by comboing one of these 1-drop Vegeta or Trunkses, that goes to your Z energy, then you play any of the yellow Z battle cards, even maybe just a 1-drop Oolong, which I think only has a 1 or 2 Z energy cost, so you can get pretty cheap with it as well. And then you put these right back in your drop area just to be replayed by the Awakened side of the leader. That seems perfectly fine. The yellow decks coming out in Zenkai series, we have Piccolo Superhero and we have Bardock's Crew, both of which I haven't put enough time into yet, but I am willing to say that they do seem strong in their own rights. Are they going to be quite as good as Trunks Vegeta, which is already an established yellow deck? I'm not sure, but I can definitely see a world where that might be the case. What's interesting about this list, though, I can't believe, is that they're playing SSB Vegeta Fatherly Assistance, which is a Sparking 5 super combo. I can see it, like maybe sometimes you get stuck at 6 life and you don't really want to rely on a 4 life super combo, but you can play Self-Awakening cards in the side deck, which this list seems to not necessarily include. But going back to what I mentioned before with SSB Vegeta Surmounting the Impossible, that is going to be a Z card that mostly every deck can and should play to get yourself to the exact life point you want to be at. Like this deck, for example, or any deck that awakens and goes down to 6, you play 1 copy of SSB Vegeta Surmounting the Impossible in your Z deck, you use that to get down to 5 life, and now your blocker negates are live, and then you can get to 4 whenever you want. So getting to 4 is actually going to be incredibly consistent with Zenkai, which I do definitely find kind of interesting. Moving on to the next deck, we have Red Black GT. So again, black probably just for Overrealm here. But GT, I mean, it's definitely been established as one of the lesser red decks in this format, mostly compared to U7 Goku and a little bit to Bulma. So do I think GT is going to be all that great next set? Probably not. What's funny is I think there's actually a card in the Pan starter deck that will work with this deck, because it says, like, if your leader's a Pan, you can just play it, and this leader counts as a Pan on the Awakened side. So that might lead to some interesting things, but I think that this is going to be kind of just like a fan favorite pick. People will play it. Some people will have success with it, but it's not necessarily going to be one of the better red decks, especially now that we have SS4 Gogeta entering the mix. And even Red Sin seems good too. So with that, with those two decks, with U7 Goku and maybe even Red King Piccolo doing some things, I think GT is going to be one of the more rogue red decks, but might still be okay in my opinion. Next up after that, we have King Cold. Okay, this is interesting. King Cold doesn't really do all that much in the combo step, so it might be tough to use the Z deck, but like I mentioned, green Z cards are a little bit suspect, to be honest. They're not nearly as powerful as the red or blue ones in my opinion. Will this be a fine green deck? Probably. I mean, the thing about green is it's probably the 4th best color in the game right now, you know, with black kind of being the worst at this point. And with nothing in blue, red, or yellow getting hit, green doesn't necessarily bump up in the ranks by any means. So I think that King Cold is kind of going to be more of the same, of just like, it's going to be a fine deck because a lot of people will dedicate their time to it, and those people might do well with it. But besides that, I don't expect it to be like a top tier deck or anything. One cool thing though is, like, sometimes you play Frieza Charismatic Villain in green decks, and it kind of just sits there on the board because it's 10k battle card that can't really threaten Awakened leaders or 15k battle cards. But what's cool about it is now you can, you know, counterplay with Frieza, you can pop something 7 or less, and you can always combo it away to go to Z energy. That's a pretty efficient usage of Frieza, so wanted to make that known here. Anyways, moving along the line, we have green, yellow, black Jiren. Wow, we actually had a green, yellow Jiren list. That's very interesting. I'm not going to go through the whole list here because it's not a deck profile, and I would probably have to refresh myself with what a bunch of these cards do, but two interesting ones off the rip are Hit Assassin Strike, which might be a solid contender in some green decks coming up. Like the new Roshi deck has to do with KOing opponents' battle cards by battle, so if you can do that successfully, you'd be able to play Hit, and this card is powerful on its own. This card puts a big ultimatum on opponents, and that's basically your opponent either has to like kind of baby hatch their turn or pitch 2 cards to keep attacking. So that's a pretty big tax there. I think, again, the difficult part is kind of getting this card into play, but that might be fixed by maybe like King Piccolo or Master Roshi. Those archetypes might be able to use this card decently well. And then we have Majin Buu Unadulterated Destruction, a very interesting green card. It kind of feels like green's generic boss monster, but the fact that it's like a double-sided board wipe is definitely pretty suspect. Having to give up your own unison definitely feels pretty rough, so I wish the card wasn't so two-sided. And this list seems to revolve around Frieza Army Helipod, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. If I'm taking a quick look, I guess you can proc that via Jiren, Pride of U11, and I guess they had the Cell Super combo here, so that's definitely pretty interesting. But yeah, Jiren, not so much on the combo tricks, so might just be another like one of those rogue decks that people might dedicate time to. But I do think this one is cool. This leader is very, very cool, even on a mono yellow build, if we see some significant aggro come back into the format. And what also has me thinking is, like, does this activate battle get around SS4 Gogeta? I would imagine that it does. So maybe Yellow Jiren even has a good shot up against the red SS4 Gogeta deck. That's actually really, really interesting. I'm definitely interested to find out more about that and try that out. But anyways, going back to the list here, Green Cooler, I tried to click on the link, it didn't work, so I'm not going to click on it here. But I think this deck and Unison Goku, Yardrat Goku, are going to be pretty similar in this boat, meaning like they're unison based decks. They don't combo a whole lot, so obviously they're not going to abuse Zenkai all that much. Will they be okay? I mean, I think it's still relatively tough to deal with unison-based strategies. I definitely think that Yardrat Goku is probably better than Green Cooler. Green Cooler just belonging to, again, the 4th best color in the game and not really doing all that much crazy threatening stuff compared to some other decks. I think it, again, will just be fine for people who decide to play it, but maybe not all that great. Then we move on to Black Mass Sand. This deck has been moving up in the ranks of consistency. Like, we're seeing this deck more and more, which is crazy. Don't forget, this is one of the most popular decks. I think it was the core TCG online regional, so that's one that's really interesting to note. But this deck might actually use Zenkai fairly well. Again, Zenkai energy color does not matter, so combo a Champa onto your critical leader for double strike and you charge that in your Z energy. The only problem is, though, like, the generic Z cards are not going to be as good for black as they are, again, in blue and yellow mostly, and red. So that's one problem there. I think maybe Mass Sand could do some stuff where it charges different color energy, and maybe that opens up some access to some other Z cards, but then you would probably be giving up the best super combo you could play, which is SS Vegeta, the Prince Strikes Back. Maybe you can find a way to charge some multicolor energy so you don't lose out in this super combo, but that might be a little bit too much to jam into this deck specifically. But yeah, I mean, with more generic Z battle cards, I could definitely see this deck being pretty solid in Zenkai. Moving on from there, Trunks talked about it. Red King Piccolo, we talked about it in the Rogue video. I won't go too much into it here. It gets a little bit of support from the new set with the Green King Piccolo stuff. Maybe it's just like 1 or 2 cards, but I mean, it just seems like a good red glass cannon aggro deck. It does use the combo step very well, obviously, but when you're comboing cards in King Piccolo, you're typically playing them to the board, so you're probably not going to put them in your Z energy. That's not to say that King Piccolo can't generate Z energy. I think it could do that perfectly fine, but yeah, it's not going to be one of the best ones in my opinion if you're solely looking to abuse the Z deck. Then we have Green Raditz Reboot. Again, another deck that is increasing in consistency over several events. Very, very interesting. Of course, this link is an upside down photo, but anyways, I mean, you guys get the gist. We've seen this list or lists like this at a few events now. It seems like the Cell Surge Light, which I think having a Cell Surge Light deck in the format is actually relatively healthy. Like, having some sort of hand control, definitely I find healthy when most decks in the format are blowing up to these ginormous hand sizes, right? So I think that's a pretty good thing. Going back, we have Black Machika Bora, which is a deck that I really liked in this format. I was testing it quite a bit. I found the Yellow Trunks matchup to be the hardest, but this deck is actually getting a really cool card in set 18 in the form of a tournament pack, that Supreme Kai Brainwash card. That card is really solid. It's basically one of your self-awakeners that makes your opponent warp a card from their hand. So having that, and I believe it's also a 20k beat stick. It's basically a servant, so maybe you want to fit some Overlord in the deck, but still a really cool card. So Machika Bora, not done getting support, obviously. Will it use the Z deck well? Again, there's not really great black Z cards, but over time, I'm sure black will get solid generic Z cards, so you'll be able to fuel that pretty well. And then we are wrapping up with Android 16. Definitely a deck that seems solid in Zenkai. I mean, it definitely revolves around comboing. So when you combo with a blue-green from the drop, you can put it right into your Zenkai. And then you have access to blue Z cards, which are great cards. You might even find access to some green ones in niche scenarios, but that is a really cool thing about multicolor decks in Zenkai format. You're going to have access to the Z battle cards of 2 different colors because you charge 2 different colors, and again, the Z energy color does not matter, so that's pretty cool there. And then finally, we have Skillless Gohan, which is actually getting another new card in the Set 18 tournament packs. So that's really cool to look at as well. Is this deck going to use Zenkai all that well? Probably not. It's not really a super combo-centric deck, but it seems like this deck plays, I think this 2-drop Blue Yellow Whis here is kind of like a Nimbus Master Goku, where you combo it to play a Skillless. I could be getting that wrong, but in a deck like this, you could obviously play Nimbus Master, which you would combo. It would go to your Z energy. You'd also play a 20k vanilla off that. That's pretty good. And then play whatever you need out of the Blue Z deck. Blue Z deck obviously looking really strong, so this could be something to look at. Again, with a new TP, it might be good as well. But anyways, guys, that's what I wanted to go over today. Just talking about some of the decks that did well at this event and how they might transition into the world of Zenkai. Of course, let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.